This new town was meant to be a cozy harbour, a quiet place by the water, but as the city has expanded, I've completely failed to consider where the wind pollution was blowing, and now we're facing the consequences. In addition, large lorries are rolling through the narrow streets from the busy port, completely ruining the peaceful charm. And the port is entirely gridlocked. Sometimes the best part of building a city is realising your mistakes and coming back to make it better. And today, we're going to solve these problems and turn this area back into a thriving, livable community. Welcome back to Sunny Isle. Hello everyone and welcome back to Sunny Isle. We're just down in the harbour, in the town that we've been building in the last few episodes. We had some pretty bad traffic coming through here with the ferries getting stuck behind some of the fishing vessels. But what I've done is I've come through with the narrow boatway and I've added a little bit of a shortcut. It was a very tight squeeze getting that in here, and it's not the most elegant turn for this boat, but it seems to resolve the issue. As long as there's not more than maybe 7 or 8 boats queued up, then the ferry has free movement. So that's resolved that issue. Now, I'll be honest, I've been a little bit of a silly goose because I've built this city without really considering where the wind pollution's going, and we're already facing the consequences. So today we're going to try a few techniques, whether it's vanilla or if it's modded, or if it's simply just reconfiguring the layout of the city, especially some of the traffic issues we've got going through here. We've got all these large lorries rolling through the streets of this quaint little town, and it doesn't really fit the vibe in my opinion. But before we have a look at any of those issues, I just wanted to thank everybody that commented in the last episode with some new name ideas. I just had a look at some of your comments and some of your stories, and a few of them just really resonated with me. One name that I really liked for this main town, I think the original comment said Marlow Bay, but I think given that this is a cozy harbour town where people can find shelter out at rough seas, I felt like Cove just gave that kind of cozy feeling. And this one was given to us by Tivok17, and you've got an apartment block named after you now. And another name that I really liked was Baronstown. Now, I didn't name the town itself after that comment, but I did like the idea of maybe a baron, an old baron that had set up shop in this harbour town and kicked off the industrial area. And over time, this has obviously been reconfigured into a more modern establishment, but the name has stuck around. I quite like the idea of this being the gate of the city, or the gate of the island. And it was a blathering blighter who came up with the name Baronstown. Absolutely fantastic username. Thank you so much for that contribution. And then since we're working with a lot of the low density French assets by Scunny, I thought it only appropriate to name this field up here Boulogne Valley. And Boulogne is a town on the northern coast of France, which holds a special place for many people that grew up in Scunny, because that's where we took a school trip. We travelled for hours and hours all the way down and we visited Boulogne. And if you know where Boulogne is, it's right next to Calais. You don't go very far. It's about half an hour down the road. Get them down to France, but we won't go very far. We'll just go to Boulogne. And so I think that's a pretty fun name for this little area. And we've got this hill on the side here, which covers up a lot of the noise and a lot of the industrial lights that will be coming from the port and the oil tanks. And then on the other side, we've got this large mountain. But overall, I'm really happy with all the names through here, and your contributions are always welcome. Let's go ahead and start having a look at what we can do to fix this problem. All right, first of all, you can see from this pollution overview that it isn't just polluting buildings. Of course, we've got the nanopolymer synthesis unit, and it looks like we can make the upgrade to this special industrial building now. If we stick this on, we'll get a plus 5% bonus in industry efficiency citywide, which is pretty good. So we'll go ahead and add that on. And that's a really, really pretty add-on, isn't it? You've got this large chamber in the middle there. Very, very nice. All right, so clearly we've got a big issue with pollution in this town. The first thing I want to do is have a look at some mods. The mod that I'll be using, and I have been using it for a little bit, is No Pollution by Brucey Boy. This is from the same modder that has taken over the traffic light enhancement mod and also created the modern version of Involume. Anyway, with No Pollution, you can still have pollution in your city, and when you install the mod, it actually doesn't do anything until you come into the settings and change them. And since the game doesn't really give you any tools or ways to battle these issues other than maybe demolishing a building or changing your road layout, I am quite happy to just change the way the vanilla mechanic works so that it isn't so destructive. So for ground pollution, I've reduced it down to 25%, and the same for air pollution. I've reduced it down to 25% of the vanilla value. And as I said, I don't want to completely remove pollution from my game. I do want to play with it a little bit. But until we receive better ways to battle pollution in the game, I'd rather just keep this to a minimum. It's still there. It still influences the way I play the game, but not to the detriment of my playstyle, where I like to mix in a little bit of industry into the cities, because in reality, these things aren't always so far apart. Now, that mod hasn't really helped us from what you can see here, because I've actually been running with those settings for a while. I think if we were playing vanilla, this whole town would go into some sort of lockdown for the amount of pollution levels going. But if we have a look at the info view, we can see the polluting buildings, but we can also see that there's pollution coming from traffic. So that is something that we'll have to consider, is figuring out a way to move traffic around the city without necessarily adding to the pollution. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, and it has to be this oil refinery. It is producing way too much pollution to be this close to the town centre, and some of you quite rightly pointed this out in the last episode. So what we'll do is we'll swap it with this pharmaceutical manufacturing building here, which has a much lower rate of pollution, and I think that should resolve some of our issues. If we quickly go into our info view again, have a look at the direction of the wind, you can see a lot of it is going uphill. We don't have any development on this side of the bay, just a few buildings as you head into South Bay, but I don't think they'll be affected. And I thought that would have been a painless activity, but for some reason, the pathfinding on this asset just became corrupt, but I couldn't figure out a way to fix it. So I did end up having to demolish this building as well. I only wanted to demolish one of the assets to avoid disrupting the supply chain. And we now have the big farmer building over here, which is quite a bright garish yellow. But if we have a look at the info panel and scroll down to advanced building control, we could change the brand to something else. So we've got Patback Medical, or we've got Ocean Port Pharmaceuticals, which looks a little bit sad and drab to me. So we'll stick to Patback Medical. That nice green color kind of blends into the environment nicely. And that should produce a lot less pollution through here. However, we've got quite a lot of regular industry through here, which is also quite polluting. And I don't think these complaints are going to go away anytime soon if we leave it like it is. We do have a little bit of office near this train station. We also have the post office, creating a little bit of a buffer. I've gone ahead and downloaded the Clean Industrial mod by the recommendation of some of you in the comments of the last episode. And this is a industrial zone that removes many of the polluting industries. It's mostly warehouses and industries that don't cause as much pollution, such as medical or textiles. And even though some of those businesses probably do cause some pollution, it's much less than, say, oil or metals. So we're going to go ahead and replace all the industrial buildings through here with this new zone. And it also includes some warehouses as well. So it'll be interesting to see what has popped up here. Looks like we do have a little bit of a mix. We've got vegetables and livestock there. This one is wood and timber, and we can see we've got some of these wood processing buildings here, which are animated if you have a close look. It's a very subtle animation. Little Chirperstein wood plant. So I'm pretty chuffed with this area, and we also redid this one, and I added this northeast building. I feel like that kind of suits the industrial area quite nicely, especially along the edge. You could imagine maybe that was an old factory building at the back with a little shop at the front. Let's have a look at how the city is coping with the pollution. It's still struggling, but I imagine it takes quite a while for it to clear up. So what we'll do now is we'll head over to the port and see if we can make some fixes over there and prevent some of those loud, noisy, polluting vehicles from traveling through our beautiful new town. As always in City Skylines, inspiration comes and you just feel like building something new. And so the town has grown, and the port has almost suffered a little bit because of it, because it can't make its deliveries as easily as it could before because it has no direct access to the highway. And if we look at the wider region, we have this highway that runs through the island, over this bridge, and heads to the north side of Sunny Isle City. And there's no way to get onto this highway apart from this convoluted interchange that we've got over here, which is a little bit far away for a lot of vehicles to drive. The other option is they come all the way up here. Now, they won't be able to make a U-turn and head back onto the highway towards the main city. They'll have to come all the way down here, possibly make a turn off here, find somewhere to make a U-turn, and then come back onto the highway. But I think this is a good opportunity to make a new connection to the port, but coming around this hill instead of going through the town. But we do have to consider this hill is very steep, so we'll have to hug the coast very closely to keep the road fairly level. You don't want those cargo vehicles having to climb hills or steep gradients because nobody's got time for that. And have you seen gas prices lately? They're crazy. Okay, we need to jump into the main port window, and then we need to find the small auxiliary gate. So we've got that, but instead of placing this at the end of the pier, I quite like to separate the traffic for the oil port from the cargo port. Not completely, but we'll try to encourage it to come through a different way. And I think we could have an entrance here. Now, we don't necessarily need to have it connected to the road. We could have it just to the side here and maybe have it slightly elevated. I think that's okay. And then we'll bring a road in and curve it down. Okay, with the port gate in place now, let's use our custom rural road and we'll make our way around the hill. I've got my Anarchy tools turned on with constant slope, so we'll try to keep the gradients as smooth as possible through here. And this is a nice slow road. It's only around about 50 miles per hour. And I think we can bring that through here quite nicely without too many issues. All right, so we've got now this coastal road going all the way around, and that heads down and into the harbour. And we can already see there's some vehicles using it already. Let's just have a look at the route highlighter. And yeah, we can see there's plenty of traffic coming through here. Let's compare that to the port. Whoa, we got a lot of vehicles coming and going out of this section here. But we still have quite a lot of port traffic heading through the city and through Boulogne Valley. But I think once we've implemented all our changes today, we'll see most of the traffic heading around here instead. Now, to finish this off, I'm just going to decorate it slightly just so that it fits in with the rest of the Sunny Isle aesthetic. All right, I think we've got something working here. I'm using the cliff and boulder pack, and I wanted to try it out and see if it would fit the Sunny Isle aesthetic. I do wish that the assets were a little bit more similar to the vanilla boulders, which are a typical grey color, which I know you can recolor these, but you can really see the definition on these cliffs are not very good up close. From afar, not too bad. So I'm quite happy that we're just using this as a little bit of a sample, and I didn't completely avoid this asset. I think it's always worth experimenting with things, especially as I've seen quite a few other people working with this asset pack and it seems to work. It hasn't caused any errors up to this point, and it's a neat little feature in it. Okay, so along here I've upgraded the road to have a little bit of a retaining wall. We created this little break area, which I think is quite interesting. Threw down a shop, a little bit of residential, just to bring a little bit of life in the area. I find that if you don't have at least some residential, it can be a little bit dead. So we've got these Australian row home assets. These are fantastic. And then we have EU waterfront commercial up at the top of the hill, and a car park, which is free. Probably why it's super popular. And then over here, this is kind of like a truck stop. I didn't bother using any truck detailing or truck parking spaces. I just wanted something that was quick and dirty, and I think this does the job. And we've already got a couple of visitors down here. Little gazebo on the end there, and I think that's quite a nice little feature, a nice little lookout point over the sea into the mainland. And then as we go along, I just bushified it, added a little bit of rocky beach texture, and then down here we had a little bit of a gap, so I've added these water ponds. And then we've got the gate down here, which is functioning but we've got pretty bad queues through here, so I think we'll need to fix this up and put in some sort of one-way system. Otherwise this is just going to be carnage all the time. So I think a lot of the problems could be resolved if we simply just flip this one-way road that way, and then many of the vehicles will need to follow the road along the outside. I think we'll turn that into an exit only, and this could be an entrance. And I think that should fix most of the traffic if we just speed this up and see what it looks like. Okay, that's working pretty well. I do wonder if we could put a 2-lane road going this way to help some of those vehicles move along the port a little bit easier. And this road heading to the gate we can convert into an asymmetric road, so that we can make use of that extra left turn. And I think that should fix all our port traffic issues within the port itself. So let's just speed it up and have a quick look to see if it's working. Alright, I really enjoy the fact that this is functioning exactly how we intended it to now. It's supplying the local economy with goods, with jobs, and it's no longer a nuisance to the town because we're redirecting much of the traffic around the coast. However, there's a couple of other features in the game that we can use to help restrict traffic and improve the life of people in this city. Alright, so the town is still suffering from high air pollution, but I'm hoping that we could cut some of that down by reducing the amount of pollution coming from roads. If we take a look at our air pollution info panel and turn off everything but traffic air pollution, we can see these brightly coloured yellow roads running through the area are contributing to our problem. So if we go into Marlow Cove and have a look at some of these policies, we can enact the heavy traffic ban. And this policy will ban trucks and heavy vehicles from entering the district. And the good thing about this policy is that it won't affect our highway viaduct because this policy isn't applied to highway roads. Let's go into Boulogne Valley. Let's also enact the same policy here, so heavy traffic ban. And I think with a community like this, we also want to encourage some recycling. And we'll go back down to Marlow Cove. We'll turn on recycling as well. And then in this area, I think we will turn on the roadside parking fee, since we do want to reduce the amount of traffic coming through here. If people want to park up in one of these other neighborhoods, they're more than welcome to. But I think that's a pretty good spot in terms of traffic management through here. I don't see any traffic symbols popping up at the moment, which is the first in a long time. And if we have a closer look at the port gate down here, we can see that there's barely any traffic now, which is fantastic. It's all being rerouted to this rural road heading along the coast. Alright, so with all the pollution now resolved, the city is in a pretty good place. I'd like to add some enhancements that's been suggested. One of them is using a new mod to add a marina down in the harbour. Over by the fishing pier, I think this is a pretty good spot to bring that marina in. Now this is a super nifty mod, so let's go into landscaping tools and go to pathways, and we'll be able to find this marina network just here. And look at this, we can just drag it out and it populates the marina with some boats. And I'm thinking we could just have a bunch of boats just running along this wall here, and I think another load of boats there, and I love the fact that it just snaps into place. We can go into the transportation menu, go into the water section, and this is where we can find extra boats if we want to add some extra props along here. And it just adds a bit more life to the build, you know, having these random props put together without too much effort. And if we look at the city as a whole, it just adds so much more to the atmosphere. I think that's a great improvement, and it's a great mod. It's called Marina Network. Absolutely check it out on PDX Mods. Okay, so we're back in the main city down by the old port, which we transformed into a leisure destination. We've got the sports pavilion, we've got the water park, and we've got the basketball center. But when putting this place together, I also included some of StarQ's zoning blocks. And some of those are the office variety. So we head into the info panel and we go to office. We can see that we've got these 3 signature buildings popping up through here, and these are in fact the zoning blocks. So if we go ahead and we just jump into these and just remove them, they've been removed from the city, and they're the only ones that we had. The only other office signature buildings that we've got are actual signature buildings from the Eastern European pack, I believe. And then we've got another one down here, which is also a modular block. So we better get rid of that one as well. And I think that's all of them from the map. I'm going to have a quick scan in the other areas. So Marlow Cove only has one signature building, and that is the church. But at least it's a real asset, not a block. And then down by the Porter Switch On and Clipstrand, I can see that we don't have any office signature buildings, so we haven't used any of those zoning blocks in the area. So as you can see, we're already seeing demand for office going up. And we'll just wait, I'd say 5 minutes, and we should see this bar fill all the way up to the top. Okay, so the office has pretty much reached the top of the bar, and as I say that, it's dropping down. But it's quite interesting over those couple of minutes, that's all it was, that the whole simulation, the whole city is being affected by this issue. We can see that industrial demand has dropped. We can see that commercial demand is jumping up and down. And some of these demands are asking for things I've never seen before, such as commercial demand saying that the fact that more private motoring and higher gas station demand is a positive. I'm not sure if that means we've got a high proportion of motorists in the city or whether we've got too much. And then the fact that industrial demand has dropped could be the fact that the office demand is taking up more of the workers, as some of the offices are now more profitable. Anyway, it's really interesting stuff. I still think this whole demand system is a little bit of a black box. I don't quite understand what all these positives and negatives necessarily mean. I do know that we've got some of Star Cube zoning blocks for commercial, so I might go ahead and remove those as well and see if that fixes anything. And we're back down at the port. The leisure port is where we've got these, so we'll remove those, and I wonder if that will fix anything. Now, I do have a bunch of the blocks in the industry area. So we've got, I think, one here, and then we've got another one here. But looking at demand, I don't think industry is being affected that much. But to play it safe, I'm going to completely remove all the zoning blocks, and I'll remove the mod from the game. And then at least we're playing with the original version of the demand mechanics. We're not trying to fudge it in any way, and hopefully we could see the city rebalancing itself, and we've got healthy demand for everything from this point on. Down by the freight terminal, I know that we had quite a few through here, which is a shame because I do like the fact that these buildings are functional. I think they're just props at the moment, so we might want to come through here and upgrade this area to actually have some businesses in the area. Otherwise we might not see as much traffic or as much life running around our little city, and that's what I really enjoy, seeing all the people going about their business. But if we quickly just run through each of these, so industry, office, I think we've got them all, and it looks like we've retained a healthy demand throughout. So looking at this, we've got some tax complaints for low density, medium density. Looks like high density is in a good spot. And then looking at commercial, there's still a complaint about unoccupied buildings, and I think that is because we've overbuilt commercial. And then it looks like industry is pretty happy. They've got lots of high skilled labor availability. Taxes are in a good place. And similarly for office, there's no complaints here. So I'm happy to see that the simulation and the demand is working. But let's just jump back into that commercial view and have a look through these areas. So I definitely think there's a little bit too much commercial here. These might be mixed use, so they may be people living in the same buildings as well, but we might want to just transform some of these into just residential buildings. I know that Chinatown feels a little bit out of place because there's no one really nearby that would shop here. So perhaps we need to bring in less commercial. I'm not sure if we could even support residential here because of the pollution from the industry in the area. So this area is kind of stuck in an awkward spot of what we can do. We might actually have to just remove the industry and have a look at redeveloping this into something a little bit grander in the future. Maybe our own little Canary Wharf. I think that would be quite exciting. But I'm just going to run through the city. I'm going to start replacing some of those commercial buildings with residents, and I'm hoping we can get to 80,000 people today. Pretty much back to where we was a couple of patches ago when we lost so many citizens to the updates. Okay, so I was a little bit optimistic trying to get to 80k. We did manage to get around about 2,000 people. But in addition to that, all the new residential buildings that we put down were mostly medium and high density. And many of those were zoned as well. So they will naturally level up over time, and they'll also grow in the number of households. So we are actively moving towards that 80k target. So we'll have to have a look at some areas in the city in the future that we can develop. Maybe we want to add some new neighborhoods in the farmlands in the valley, or we want to bring in a little bit more density in the city, because for the most part, it still is fairly low and medium density through here. And we've got all these vanilla row homes, which aren't necessarily the most attractive assets now that we've got all the new region packs in the game, as well as all the custom assets that's being uploaded every month to the PDX mod store. But for the most part, I think we've resolved the issue with not enough customers. Just removing some of that commercial property space in your city, replacing it with people, is only going to drive up demand for commercial, because you're bringing in customers. And the places where we do have complaints are mostly signature buildings. So I don't necessarily want to replace the supermarket. I don't want to replace the hotels. I don't want to replace the theatre. We'll just have to let them remain, and hopefully they'll figure out a way to be a profitable business again. Now, we are facing an issue in the industry area where we've got high resource costs. We're barely providing any natural resources on the island other than farm products. We don't have many mines, many stone mines. We don't have much logging. So there's a lot of opportunities in this city to increase productivity, but we can't be building more industry when we don't have anybody available to work in them. If we go into our population tab, our unemployment rate is still super low at 2.1%. So that tells me that we need to build more houses. And I'm thinking this space between the entrance to Marlow Cove and the highway is a pretty good spot for a modern housing estate. And the fact that we've resolved our traffic issues through here, I think is fantastic. So why not use this space for something a little bit more useful? So if we have a look at pollution, the pollution levels through here are quite high. So I don't think we'll be able to build anything on this left side, but this right side should be okay. I know it's quite close to the highway. We'll have a look at noise pollution. It is pretty bad near the highway. So again, we're really pushing the boundaries where we can put residents. So it's going to be in the middle of this tree area, and then we'll have to use some decoration around the edges. So because the fact that we don't have that much usable space through here, we're going to use a high and medium density, as we've been doing throughout the episode, to bring more people and use land efficiently. this section at the top here is starting to become probably the most populated part of our new town of Marlow Cove, and I'm really enjoying it. If we have a look from the distance here, that estate does stick out a little bit, but it's not too prominent on the skyline. We do have the hills in the background that kind of make it look a little bit shorter, and I think this is a great addition to the city. It kind of tells the story of industry growing and there needing to be more homes in the city. This could be a workers' village. It could have been constructed by the local industry nearby. We do have some pretty heavy stuff. We've got the pharmaceutical building, we've got the oil refinery. So it only makes sense to keep the bulk of the workers pretty close to where they'll be working. And I think this is looking fantastic. And I really enjoy the fact that we can try out these 6x6 zonable assets from the UK pack. And the reason why I went for these is because they include this car parking space out front, and it makes the construction of the estate feel a little bit more airy, a little bit more roomy. We don't have buildings up against each other, making it feel a little bit cramped. The people here have a room to breathe, although it is filled with car parks. It's not a nice garden, but we have surrounded the area with lush vegetation. We've got this nice little footpath that runs along the side of the estate, this little bridge to bypass this entrance to the roundabout, which is proving to be super popular. And I did go ahead and add a whole bunch of extra parking through here. I've got the surface parking just up against the highway here. This was pretty close to a lot of ground pollution, air pollution. So I think this is quite a nice spot. And then I've also got these underground car parks by Scunny, which are really nice little assets to plop down without having to worry about taking up too much space. And these can take up to 280 vehicles. Wow, fantastic. It doesn't seem to be heavily used. So we've got, again, some breathing room as the area does grow up and become a little bit more dense. And I think this one down here is probably, yeah, there's nobody using it at the moment. I think I might just go ahead and delete that. There is such a thing as having too much surplus parking. We've got one down here that's got a few people using it, and a little gravel car park down here near this little dog park and green space. But down near this service station is probably where we've got the most detail. I did go ahead and put down this pedestrian overpass, which I think is the best thing we could have done here, given how much traffic we've got coming in to the city entrance. And I know this configuration for the central bus stop isn't necessarily needed here because we're not using highway roads. We do have pedestrian paths on both sides, so we could have quite easily had the bus stop on the side of the road. But after seeing some discussions on Discord with a few people, this central island station idea I thought was quite neat. So we do need to put in the buses, and we'll do that shortly. But that comes up here where we got a little bit of a cycle path just to help provide a shortcut for cyclists. And I can see there's one coming through here, and they're probably just going to have to go onto the road. Unfortunately, it's not the safest space for cyclists. But to tie the whole place together, we've got this area up at the top where we've got local amenities for the residents, but also for people who can drive here. We've got this kindergarten centre, which is acting as a welfare centre. So anybody that's struggling in the area will be able to receive a boost from here. So there's a plus 5% well-being within 800 meters, a little bit of recreation. This comes with the China pack. And to me, this kind of looks a little bit, well, it is a nursery at the end of the day. So this is where little kids can be dropped off when people are at work, or maybe there's community activities at the weekend. I've kept a little bit of green space over here, which is sheltered with some tree-lined edges and bushes. People can come here, walk the dog. I did the little water tower just for a little bit of detail. I think that's quite nice. And then I've gone ahead and added this supermarket. This is also by Scunny, and I've gone ahead and added the Super U branding. I thought this was a fun brand to include here. It's the System U group, which is found in mid-sized towns and rural areas across France. We can already start to see there's plenty of visitors coming in here, doing some shopping. And we've even got the animated entrance. There we go. I can just see it moving a little bit there, even though people are just walking through it. I think that's a nice little addition to the asset. And this is a beautiful asset, and I've connected that up. I did create a new entrance to the supermarket via this little dual carriageway that we've got here. And I've restricted right turn, so people do have to go around the roundabout, similar to what we did with the service station over here. And this is becoming a really interesting area with all the different layers, all the traffic. And I'm really looking forward to getting some buses in here as well. I also wanted to point out the fact that we've lowered this highway road. So originally the two sides of the highway were on the same level, and we had quite a steep retaining wall, which wasn't necessarily believable. It's quite understandable when they constructed this highway that they didn't want too much earthwork. So I think this is a really nice addition, and the fact that we can now set this highway to the ground means that we can add this noise barrier, which isn't possible when you're using a retaining wall or an elevated section, and that should reduce some of the noise through here. I've got sound barriers over here as well, and I'm hoping that makes the area a little bit more livable. If we go into here, we can see that much of the central area of the living space is now blue. It's not too bad, although I still think that people are complaining. If we click on one of these residents, oh, they're happy now. So they were content when I first checked these, and it looks like they're really happy with healthcare coverage. Proximity effects, that's more than likely coming from the welfare center. Reliable mail service, that's great. And walking distance to the elementary school, that's interesting because that's the German assets that we've got down near the beachfront. Where they are complaining is polluted air, which is no surprise. They are near some very busy homes, small homes, which is unavoidable when you're constructing these high density assets in such a small space. And high noise pollution, again, being so close to the highway is going to be an issue, but it looks like people are happy living here. It's more than likely cheap accommodation, the cheapest in the area, so pretty good space to live if you want all the local amenities without having to pay a high price for some premium square footage. Before we draw down the new bus lines, we need to put down the compact bus depot. So I think this is a pretty good spot tucked behind this supermarket here. Let's create a little bit of space. I might even leave just enough space to put a small footpath between them. Delete a couple of these trees, make sure there's lots of space, and then we'll extend the surfaces so that the road is connected. There we go, a little bit of foliage, and we're good to go. And you can see here I've installed a new bus asset. These are absolutely beautiful. So these are by Unmaestro. These are the Mercedes-Benz Citaro C2. And what I love about these is they come in a left-hand drive edition. So we're going to use these for our new line. We can see what they look like compared to the vanilla asset down here. I mean, the vanilla asset is still really nice, but I love the fact that we can have these new custom buses in our city now. So if you're creating assets, don't forget about us left-hand drivers, because we really do like those custom models as well. Okay, I've done a little bit of off-camera work setting up those bus lines. I've added quite a few, and I've also added the new mod Transit Overview so you can clearly see what we've been working on. So originally we had this purpley violet line. This is one that goes all the way down to Mont Clementine along the coast. But I've gone ahead and added these 4 lines as well. So the lime line, if we have a look at where that goes along the front of Marlow Bay. And then we've got a few stops through Boulogne Valley. And then that heads all the way down to the incinerator plant. And I think, yeah, I dead ended it here. Okay, if we have another look at other colors we've got going on, I really enjoy this mod. It's so easy to see what we're doing. But speaking of colours that are not so easy to see, we have this light blue line, and that one goes around the back. It makes a stop in between the pharmaceutical plant and the refinery, makes a stop at Barons Gate Estate, just on this little median section here, and it also shares that with another line, and then it just shoots off the map through the highway, and it's quite an express quick route because it's only got 2 stops between the main bus terminal and off the map. And then we've got the purple line. So this is one that was added kind of last minute. I didn't expect to put this down. I was thinking how to connect the backside of this town to other parts of the city, and I thought we'd bring it into the valley. We've got this commercial park here which is in desperate need for an update, but we have the tram terminus here, and people can either hop onto the tram to head to different parts of the town, or they could take this little footbridge and go into this little village on the hillside here. It also extends all the way up to the main bus station in the city, so it just adds an extra connection between the valley and the city, which wasn't there before. And the last line that we've got served at Brookside Street follows underneath the highway viaduct, makes a stop here just before it crosses the train track. We make another stop at the Barons Gate Estate because I imagine this will be quite a popular place for people to use public transport, so why not double up on capacity? And then it jumps onto the highway, and this is where it gets a little bit more complex, but to serve the more rural areas, we've got it coming off the highway, following this little bridge, and it comes up to the coal power plant. There's a little stop at the village here, does a U-turn, comes all the way back, makes another stop at the village. Then we have a single stop at this small village here on the other side of the highway as it jumps back onto the highway, and it heads back to the main city where we have all this beautiful public transport. And for a small place like Marlow Cove, there are so many options. People are absolutely spoilt for choice, whether they want to take the train, take the bus, or take the scenic ferry. And the ferry is pretty popular. Look, we've got 100 passengers. We're at 40% capacity for the vehicle itself. I think that's bloody fantastic. But I'll give you a quick glance of Sunny Isle from above using this new mod. And you can see we should have every single part of the city served with some sort of public transport, whether it's our new coastal line that goes all the way up to Clipstrand, or you've got the tram services. We've got the red line, the lime line, and then we've got this blue line. I do think the trams could do with a rework. I don't think we need all these lines to be separated. We could combine a couple. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way the city is working, how the public transport is being used. If we have a quick look at our statistics, and we're seeing a positive trend in bus passenger numbers, which is fantastic. So one last look from above. This is the total public transport network that we've got in this area. This mod is so good. I really wish they would install this into the base game. So it's been a while now since we've introduced those new policies and changes to the city layout to reduce pollution in this part of the build. And it looks like it's been a success. So whether it's using city policies or diverting traffic or just building buildings in the right places, there's a way to save your cities from too much pollution with a little bit of help from mods. And I think the changes we've made in the industrial estate are for the better. We should be keeping cleaner industry closer to living areas and dirty industries away. And this is probably the most green industrial area we've got in the entire build. And I think this is a blueprint to what we can do in other places on this map. And while we continue to expand on the build, making sure we've got enough people to create new industries, we still need to remember to connect it with public transport and good road infrastructure. And I think it's important to build enough parking for people that do want to use their cars. And I think it's in these awkward spaces that I find myself the most inspired. And I've really enjoyed the fact that we've been able to experiment with new public transport infrastructure, as well as upgrade some old road infrastructure. and what was once a simple city entrance has now become one of our more complex areas in the build. And although we didn't increase our population to 80,000 people as desired at the start of this episode, overall I'm really excited with the way Marlow Cove has come together. And it's what I really enjoy about this game, is building things that aren't necessarily perfect or going to last the test of time, and having to come back in the future and make it better again and again. With the construction of the bypass road at the port, it's really saved the city from becoming gridlocked and a horrible place to live, to a thriving, livable community where people can work, shop and enjoy themselves. I just want to give a special thanks to everybody that made suggestions in the last video. I feel like without your comments we wouldn't have what we have today, and I feel like it is shaping up to be one of the most unique builds that I've ever put together, and it's all thanks to you. And as always, take care and goodbye.